Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Rebecca Shirley. I'm the Deputy Director for Africa at the World Resources Institute. And I want to welcome you to the African Investment Earthshot Leaders Summit. Thank you so much for being here. At every event I've been to, I've been telling people thank you for being here with a very genuine thank you, because you could literally be in 1,000 other places right now. And you chose to be in this room, so thank you for that. And we're looking forward to a very wonderful afternoon. The focus of this year's inaugural African Climate Summit, which many of you perhaps were at, was to demonstrate, to articulate the investment opportunity that the African continent represents as a climate solutions destination for itself and for the world. We all know Africa's vast natural clean energy resources. We all know of its critical mineral stock, this continent alone holding 1/3 of all critical minerals across the globe. We know of Africa's dense carbon sinks, its mangroves and peatlands, in fact holding at any time at bay 3 full years' worth of global emissions. We know of our endless tracts of arable land and our 700 million hectares of degraded forests and farms waiting to be nursed back into productivity. The resources and opportunities across the continent are endless. And that is not at all to even speak about our young and ever-growing younger population. 10 million young people pouring onto the job market every year. The perfect ingredients to grow bustling urban hubs of green industry and economic sectors of sustainability, from restoration to circular food production, community forest enterprise, urban mobility, and more. Creating thriving economies and waves of dignified, meaningful jobs for young people, all while helping the world to decarbonize, helping to build healthy, resilient cities, and revitalizing our landscapes, the very climate armor that's going to protect us into the future. That's the narrative. That was the narrative at the summit. That's the narrative that we've been promoting across many platforms of African climate leadership this year. And it is indeed codified in the Nairobi Declaration. But achieving this vision is going to require a tectonic transformation in the way that we attract investments to the continent. Today, Africa stands at about 4% of global climate finance. And with all of this energy potential, we attract about 2% of global clean energy finance to date. In fact, it's actually less than that. We're about 0.6 clean energy finance globally. At the same time, we know that that is not even half of the 25 billion per year that the IEA finds the continent will need to achieve its goal of energy access for all by 2030. And clean energy is perhaps our most, and arguably our most commercial sector, ready for investment, so what would we say for the rest? And therefore, as a transformation is necessary, it's something that we have to think about. And as President Ruto said when officiating the Africa Climate Summit, it is a task and a test of our collective will and ingenuity. So understanding exactly what drivers will allow Africa, with all of this abundance, to sit at 4% of global climate finance and 2% of clean energy finance, that's the work to be done. And that's the work that we're here for today. We want to importantly understand these barriers and take the actions to unblock greater flows of investment and finance to the continent. And thankfully, we have leading global and Pan-African institutions ready at the helm, up to the task of convening us in order to do so. And that's what we're here for at the African Investment Earthshot Leaders Summit. Today, we are going to invite leaders to share a new African investment Earthshot vision and narrative with us, to all get behind. For Africa's at-scale investable contribution and benefits from its increased participation in the $10 trillion per annum and growing green industrial economy. We're going to figure out how to accelerate the decarbonization of the continent and the world at industrial scale. And we're going to figure out how we turn all of this opportunity into practice, into proposals. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to be your moderator for today, and I want to invite up our first speaker. Our first speaker for the afternoon is His Honorable, His Excellency, Sheikh Shakbut Nanyan Al Nanyan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the United Arab Emirates. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, but I truly just want to make a clear message. I am not the foreign minister. I am Minister of State in the Foreign Ministry that is dealing with, in this case, Africa file. But thank you very much. And I also want to note that the finance for Africa is 1.6%. That's only for COP.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
So
it's higher now.
With all the generous announcements and funds that have been introduced and led by the UAE presidency, I'm sure there will be a drastic change in that. And my country, the leadership of Saudi fully supports financing globally, but specifically in Africa, due to the vast need and opportunity. So, allow me to begin. Excellencies, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Arab Emirates and the COP28 presidency, I would like to express our pleasure to be co-hosting the Africa Investment Leaders Summit and NDC Investment Awards. Let me begin by congratulating Egypt for hosting an outstanding COP28 presidency, which has provided the UAE with a solid platform to build our ambitious COP28 presidency upon. The UAE wholeheartedly believes that the future success of international, multipolar, climate change, and SDG investment agenda is dependent on Africa. Bringing and packaging is unique and abundant combination of human, financial, and natural capital assets and advantages to the table. Over the past few days, the UAE has pledged $200 million to bolster climate resilience in vulnerable countries and welcomed the $750 million on climate solution investment platform announced by InvestCorp, an alternative investment management firm, as part of its collaboration with Innovate for Climate Tech, a coalition between Masdar City, Tencent, and Catalyst that has facilitated by the COP28 presidency. Our presidency also unveiled $1.7 billion in nature conservation finance, which cements the role of nature in climate action from COP28 to COP30. Through this vehicle, the UAE will contribute $100 million of new finance for nature climate projects, with an initial of $30 million investment in the Ghanaian government's Resilience Ghana plan. So there we go. I very much hope that many of our partners and international friends would be part of this coalition. The COP28 presidency also unveiled the Global Decarbonization Accelerator, a series of landmark initiatives designed to speed up the energy transition and drastically reduce global emissions, which has been informed by the thinking of key stakeholders, including international organizations, government policymakers, NGOs, and CEOs from every industrial sector. One of the UAE's global climate investment agendas and a COP28 presidency central goal is supporting the continent in establishing the African green industrial infrastructure as the enabling political framework equivalent to successful global investment Earthshots, such as America Inflation Reduction Act and Europe Net Zero Industry Act, through initiatives like, but not limited to, Etihad 7 and the UAE Africa Green Investment Initiative. Under the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates, the UAE is working extensively to ensure we strengthen and build a prominent and Catholic regional Africa investment Earthshot partnership, which is what I am going to announce here today. The UAE Africa investment Earthshot symbolizes UAE's long-term partnership commitment to co-development and invest at scale with Africa as equal economic partner and beneficiaries in green industrialization, green infrastructure, and energy development, whilst we simultaneously forge global market access at industrial scale for Africa and UAE manufactured and processed green technologies, goods, and services. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, the UAE also welcomes Africa's climate investment statesmanship and leadership exhibited especially by His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, amongst many other respected African leaders we are privileged to work with. To make this a meaningful institutional investor-public partnership, we especially welcome the calls for establishment of the Heads of State of Africa Climate Investor Coalition during the COP28 presidency led by the African Union Development Agency through its Continental Business Network, which is championed by President Julius Maada Boyo of Sierra Leone and President William Ruto of Kenya, and the domestic and global institutional investment community representing over $100 trillion assets which is under management, coordinated by our co-host partner, Africa Investor. We, as UAE and COP28 presidency, welcome the opportunity of our heads of state and sovereign fund leaders to be part of this bilateral coalition of heads of state and institutional climate investor coalition, to engage and mobilize global investment community and African and global heads of state in collaboration with and during the COP28 presidency to close Africa's $3 trillion plus climate and SDG private capital investment gap through institutional investor public partnership. Friends, partners, and colleagues, the UAE as a government and COP president is looking forward to being front and center with the partners delivering this ambitious and timely, realizable, and elegant Africa investment Earthshot paradigm to mobilize trillions of domestic and global private capital to African green industrial infrastructure, establishing it as a globally competitive, investable asset class. With the Nairobi Declaration as the enabling political framework and delivered through institutional and investor-public partnerships.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, and we can all see why the distinction of before and after COP28 was so important, because literally in the next couple of days we'll add percentage points to the investment that's coming to the continent. Thank you for that announcement of this partnership. It means so much to the continent. It's exactly what we're here for today. I want to thank you for that. I want to introduce now our next speaker. Our next speaker is His Honorable Excellency, Her Honorable Excellency, Ms. Naro Speckley Thomas, the Chief Executive Officer of the African Union Development Agency, AUDA NEPAD.
His Excellency Sheikh Shakut Nayan Al Nahyan, Minister of State of Foreign Affairs, UAE, His Excellency Adnan Amin, CEO of COP28 Presidency, Honorable Ministers, and the former president of Malawi, Madam Joyce Banda, my sister was here, Dr. Hubert Darso, chairman of the AU Continental Business Network, Dr. Kande Yukela, former UN Under Secretary General and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General, and I should add all the representatives here, ministers, and representatives of the President of Namibia and Sierra Leone. Is it good morning or good afternoon? I'm just lost because people running from one to the other, so whatever it is, I just want to salute everybody that is here. As you know, and for so long, Africa has been at the wrong end of international climate finance. The continent's climate financing needs is estimated, it just varies from one session to the other, but I would say to $2.5 trillion between 20 and 2030. If we look at the NDCs, it comes to around $3 trillion, which averages $250 billion per year. However, only 12% of that total amount climate finance flows into Africa. We hope that COP28's pledges will be realized and not add up to the promises of the past, the unfulfilled promises of the past. The Nairobi Declaration, which was really a big success of the Africa Climate Summit, called for Africa to take the lead in the development of global standards in their metrics and market mechanisms. And part of the market mechanism include the carbon markets and institutional investor-public partnership for private capital mobilization goals. The African Investment Earthshot, the AIE, and its work with the African and global institutional investment community through the AU Continental Business Network's 5% agenda, that is our NEPAS, actually 5% agenda, and the CBN is helping us in that, and we are so grateful, Hubert, for all the work that you're doing, is really determined to fill significant finance gap in the continent. The Excellencies, the partnership is in the process of establishing an African green industrial infrastructure as a globally competitive investable asset class, servicing the 10 trillion per annum and growing global green industrial economy with the Nairobi Declaration as the enabling institutional investor-public partnership instrument driving private capital mobilization at scale, equivalent to America's Inflation Reduction Act and Europe's Net Zero Industry Act. And ladies and gentlemen, our NEPAD is committed to this ambitious and timely Africa Investment Threshold Allocation Plan and process. This included the provision of the requisite climate investment statesmanship and working together as an institutional investor-public partnership coalition to align and create the conditions to mobilize the domestic and global multi-trillion pools of institutional climate capital at scale. The resources would facilitate the establishment of African green industrial infrastructure as a globally competitive, investable asset class. In all this, ladies and gentlemen, Africa's youth should play a critical role in sustaining the success and global competitiveness of African green industrialization as an investable asset class, and Auda's Energize Africa initiative will therefore work closely with the African Investment Earthshot to ensure the youth are properly and appropriately integrated. Auda NEPAD applauds the COP28 presidency for its vision and partnership on this Africa Investment Earthshot initiative. With us at the African Union, the presidency's vision aligns seamlessly with the aspiration of the African Union creating a powerful synergy that leverages collective strengths. The dedication to fostering a partnership that transcends traditional boundaries underscores a shared commitment to sustainable development, economic growth, and environmental stewardship. We in Audanipad would ensure that this new institutional investor-public partnership is well reflected in our program delivery report at the upcoming AU Heads of State Summit in 2024, just on the 18th of February, and building momentum throughout and in collaboration with the COP28 presidency, with formal progress reports being presented at COP29 and the next African Climate Summit. I would like to really end by saying that, our nation, is ready to really take this to a head step and to make sure that this is implemented. We've been talking and talking for a long time, and now action is clearly, needed, and we need to really take that action, at a pace that is, unparalleled. So we are there ready and we're building capacity. And not only that, we would like really all of us collectively to make sure that these pledges that we've been hearing, the figures that we've been hearing right and left, come to Africa. Africa is there, we have the capacity to realize the program. And in the realization of the program, it's not only for Africa, but for the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Bekele Thomas, for that. Thank you for establishing the vision for us. This formal establishment of the African Green Industrial Infrastructure as a globally competitive investment asset class. These are the first steps to turning the narrative of Africa's potential as a solution hub into reality. So thank you for that. And thank you for the commitment to African leadership through the 5% agenda, and ensuring that Africa's domestic institutional investors are equally able to support the growth of our infrastructure class. Thank you for that. Before we move on to moderate the panel, I want to invite up our last introductory speaker. This one is a real true honor. We have with us Mr. Adnan Amin, the CEO of COP28.
Your Excellencies, esteemed leaders, distinguished guests and friends. Let me first thank Dr. Nardos Bekele for really inspiring comments and a vision for transformation for Africa that you laid out. We resonate with that vision and we will be partners with you in that vision. But let me also take this moment to recognize two very special people. And my brothers, we started discussing the idea for this forum almost a year ago. I will not say they harassed me at some point in the year, but Kande Yukela and Hubert Danso, they are the moving force behind this and the inspiration for this series of events that we have. Thank you so much for your vision and your energy and your commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to COP28, COP of action, and a COP for the Global South, where we don't only wish to talk about change, we want to catalyze and ignite it. If you look at the achievements, a historic agreement on loss and damage with over $700 million in pledges already, $12.7 billion in pledges to the Green Climate Fund, resounding commitments by over 100 countries on tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency. A new vision on climate finance, the UAE declaration on a new global climate finance framework that brings major world leaders together and puts forward core principles to make finance more accessible, more affordable, and sustainable. a US $30 billion fund announced by the UAE, Altera, the world's largest private investment vehicle for climate action that aims to mobilize $250 billion by 2030 and focus on transforming emerging and developing markets where traditional investment has been lacking so far. You can already see you were getting ready for this engagement. And the launch of the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative by the President of Kenya, William Ruto, that aims to hyperscale green businesses and industries in Africa and break the chains of raw material export dependency that have stalled Africa's development for so long. The Africa Green Industrialization builds on the success of the Africa Green Investment Initiative launched earlier this year by the UAE and the Africa Climate Summit that has already allocated more than half of its $4.5 billion commitment for power projects across 8 countries that will add approximately 1.8 gigawatts of clean power capacity to the African grid. The convergence of these initiatives signals a paradigm shift for Africa's energy landscape, ushering in an era of prosperity driven by green industrialization. This is the point of inflection that we have reached. Excellencies, leaders, distinguished guests. The Nairobi Declaration and the Africa Climate Summit highlighted that the energy transition is an opportunity for shared prosperity. Africa has the potential to be the global trailblazer for the energy transition and for green industrialization. In fact, green industrialization is a battle cry for delivering Africa's socio-economic transformation by bringing together environmental stewardship and economic progress. It offers a pathway for sustainable and inclusive growth while powering the development of new industries, creating economic diversification and jobs. The African continent has the world's greatest green resources, including renewable power potential, but also critical materials needed to power not just homes, but Africa's green industrialization. Some projects moving forward are already coupled with green steel, sustainable mining, and processing, and this needs to be scaled up. To achieve green industrialization, we must build innovative and transformative policies to pursue low carbon growth and unlock sources of capital. Firstly, we must tackle policies and systemic level changes. Many governments across Africa are working diligently towards green industrialization, building long-term energy transition programs, and the political groundwork required to drive the necessary reforms. We call upon international partners to step up and to lend a hand. Secondly, we must unlock the private sector at the scale and speed required by deploying appropriate financial instruments, de-risking instruments, and blended finance solutions. We must restore the financial sustainability of local utilities and invest in modernization of the energy infrastructure. And let me underline the importance of the investment in infrastructure, which will enable so much of this to happen. Lastly, we must reform the global financial architecture to include access to more sustainable finance. Pension and sovereign wealth funds in emerging markets are already providing long-term capital for investment, but more is needed. Financial regulators and credit rating agencies must work with financial institutions to support a more investor-friendly regulatory framework, and this will enable transformational projects to be launched and to attract private investment. Scaling up private capital will also ensure that countries do not confront the climate battle with one hand tied behind their backs, encumbered by debt. Making adequate levels of finance available to all by releasing the full force of the private sector, will reignite collective global green industrialization, support and accelerate the drive to net zero, and create jobs and prosperity. And we all know that a young and growing population in Africa, one of the critical aspects that we need to address is employment today. This is the existential battle of our generation, and the challenge is too big and too important for us to fail. The Africa Investment Earthshot Leadership Summit clearly demonstrates that this is possible. I call on partners in this room to unite, to act, and to deliver a transformative cycle of change that will achieve Africa's green industrialization in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for affirming the COP28 presidency's commitment to Africa and to advancing the African investment Earthshot under this presidency and carrying through to COP29. I understand that we have a video now, is that correct? Yes? No, we don't have the video, so we're going to move on. So today is all about how we turn the narrative of Africa's investability as a green industrial solutions hub for the world into an actual reality. We've already heard some very promising announcements of what this is going to look like in its first iteration. Let's now talk about how we strategize to use this momentum for catalyzing transformational mobilization of finance for the continent. There's perhaps no one better to lead us in that conversation than the man himself, Dr. Hubert Danso, the chairman of the African Union Continental Business Network, able, as the president said, to turn diplomatic harassment into partnership. Thank you, Hubert, for everything that you've done to get us to this point. I'm going to invite you to chair the next session.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please allow me to stand on the previous protocols. If I can, whilst I'm speaking, kindly in the interest of time, kindly ask my panelists to make their way to the stage and be seated, and we can commence. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Wonderful. Given that I'm already standing on existing protocol, I would again like to single out Adnan for allowing himself to be harassed and not making a particular incident out of it. So, but please everybody, we've all seen what's been happening here. We think it just happens from New York and elsewhere. It is singularly catalyzed by this man here. So please, a round of applause for Adnan. What an incredible COP. The narrative before COP about Africa has changed in a mere 5 or 6 days. I mean, we owe you a testament to that, and we, as the African business community, as the African Union, you have a strong partner in us for the long haul. So thank you very much, and wishing you all the best for the rest of the COP. So, as my good colleague mentioned, my name is Dr. Hubert Danso. I'm the CEO and chairman of Africa Investor. I have the privilege of chairing the African Union's Continental Business Network, as well as the African Pension and Sovereign Wealth Fund Summit. I think you might gather from some of those titles that we spend a lot of time really trying to bring the private sector, in particular the institutional investment community, who we believe have incredible and immense promise to enable the continent to turn the tide in this whole issue of mobilizing private capital at scale. And through the likes of the work that the good CEO and the assistant from African Development Agency has put in place through the 5% agenda, we now have a framework under an institutional investor-public partnership to actually be able to do the speed. The speed that we're talking about is essentially a collaboration between private capital and public and institutional leaders. So we're very grateful to you, Honourable CEO, for your leadership. We continue to walk side by side with you on this, and I think the difference now between talking about scale and making pledges is perspective and direction. And the idea of this particular panel is not to have an illusionary, where are the trillions, do they exist, can they be leveraged from existing traditional sources, but to engage the trillions. And I can confidently tell you that that's what this panel represents. This panel represents the trillions. This panel represents institutions that have a long-term and long-standing commitment and belief in Africa as a transformative catalyst that will not only transform the continent, but also become a real player in terms of decarbonizing the world at industrial scale. And we think the framework to accomplish that is an African investment Earthshot. An African investment Earthshot is no different in many respects to the thinking and the principles driven by the global investment Earthshots. And I think, as the Honourable Chairperson and CEO has already said, the way has been shown to us in terms of how the United States have delivered their own investment Earthshot, called the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act in the last 12 months, in September they did a stock take. Within that 12 months they mobilized $500 billion, which is essentially almost 10 times more than our own foreign direct investment over the last 10 years. So we think that's a good model for us to be able to step away and take a slightly different path. The European version, which we've heard colleagues mention, is the Net Zero Industry Act, which we believe has also sent a very positive market signal to the institutional investment community. So this particular panel, we're going to be focusing on two things. How do we engage colleagues that have that expertise, that long-term perspective, as well as the balance sheets, to help us design that plan almost as a Sustainable Development Goals 17 collaboration. So I'm very pleased to have a number of colleagues that are going to work with us now to put together the investment allocation plan for the Africa Investment Earthshot. We're going to it's more like a consultation. We're going to be sharing some very high-level ideas about how we can potentially give the appropriate foundation for the Earthshot's investment allocation plan, and what type of process we can put in place to support what the sort of colleagues have set out. African Union heads of state will be briefed on this, and I can assure you, when the Honourable CEO puts something in front of the heads of state, they expect action, they expect delivery. So this is really, Honourable CEO, to let you see that you have a good and deep bench, if you like, of keen and supported institutional investors that will walk that journey with us. So, and who are they? Let me just quickly introduce them to you. We have Rich Newsom, who is the Executive Director for Investments at Mercer. He's a Global Chief Investment Strategist there. Morning or afternoon, around the applause would be great. We also have Lucy Modesta, who is the Principal Executive Officer of the Government Employees Pension Fund of South Africa, which is South Africa's and Africa's largest pension fund. We have Dr. Vera Songwe, who is about to come onto the panel, but she's here and we recognize her. She's the founder and chair of the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility. We have Mr. Gunter Tallinger, who is from Allianz, he's an Allianz board member, and he is the chair of the United Nations convened Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, which represents the global institutional investment community, representing over $20 trillion of assets under management. We also have Mr. Solomon Asamoah. Yes, thank you. We have Mr. Solomon Asamoah, who is the CEO of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. We have Mr. Ayman Solomon, who is the CEO of the Egyptian Sovereign Wealth Fund. I think we, at some point, will have Dr. Mo Ibrahim, so, is he here? I see, okay. Well, we're recognizing and let that be a welcome to come join us. Dr. Mo Ibrahim, who's the chairman of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. And we'll just finish off with Eric Crichton, who is the Director for Business Relationships at CDPQ. But I'd like to also recognize as well our good colleague from the Agency Partnership, the Global Director, Mr. Pablo Vieira. You know, we always talk about mobilizing investment at scale, but we need projects to be able to invest in. And that's what the NDC partnerships represents and stands for. So I'm going to let us go straight into this conversation and really just call on you, Pablo, just to give your views. I know that you're also required elsewhere. But let me put it this way, I'm going to pose this sort of question to you, and I think we often hear there's more than enough money in the market, where are the bankable transactions? So my question to you is, how do you feel about the array of tools that you have at your disposal to work in support of this investment Earthshot with the institutional investment community, or any ideas that you would have that could feed into the pipeline development component of the Earthshot investment plan? So over to you.
Thank you so much, and first of all, congratulations, Hubert. This is an impressive effort, and we're very happy to be working with you very closely. As you frame it, it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to investors, they will say, where are the projects? If you talk to the countries, they will say where is the money? So that's the biggest challenge that we have. Countries feel that they have strong climate commitments, that have identified strong actions to move them forward. They can't access the money. While the investors will say, there's so much money, where are the projects? And it's a reality. It's not two different stories or two different points of view. It is a reality. And what we need to do is to work together to bridge that gap. And that's where the work of the NDC partnership with the developing countries will bring them closer to the sources of finance. And you, with your efforts and with this great idea, will bring the financiers closer to the countries. We both need to move from where we are, because if not, this gap will never be bridged. We're supporting over 90 countries around the world, including 40 countries in Africa. And what we're learning is that countries need the right tools, the right capacity to be able to move forward. They know what they want, what they need. They have sent strong messages through their nationally determined contributions, their NDCs, in terms of the direction of travel for their climate ambition. In those, they reflect the sectors and the activities that need to be financed. They have identified certain projects, many of which will be recognized later today in terms of those actions that will be transformational on the ground, but they still need technical assistance and support to be able to meet financiers where they are. Projects are not designed or developed to the level of maturity that will effectively mobilize finance. Maybe in some cases they will be able to go to the GCF and get some money, but from there to being attractive to the private sector, there's a big gap. And we also need mechanisms on the other side that will allow countries to be able to more effectively mobilize finance through the management of the risk associated or perceived risk associated with the mobilization of finance from the private sector, for example. So we need to put together the different pieces of the puzzle that will start with an idea, included in an NDC, to the right enabling environments, policies, legal frameworks, to the development of projects, to the mapping of the adequate sources of finance, to the blending, and then to the private sector. That is the job. And all of us need to work together so that we can provide the support to the countries in all the different stages of the process. If we forget any of those stages, we will still have the same conversation. There's a lot of money, no projects. There's no money and a lot of projects. So that is the responsibility that we need to work on together.
Thank you very much, Pablo. That's a really specific and clear way. I think one of the things that we're talking about, and that's why our partnership has been so strong over this period, is the willingness to sort of look at curating partnerships in a different way that partnerships evolve. And I think the ability to collaborate with the investment community in the context of our portfolio companies having the expertise to actually be able to come in right at the formational stage and actually help to develop those projects in a bankable way, we think it could also be a very powerful contribution towards that work, and you can count on us to continue in that direction. So let me now come to Rich. We talk about the trillions, but I think this is an individual and an institution that routinely and daily advises trillion-dollar portfolios around the world. So let me come to you, Rich. You talk about asset allocation, African green infrastructure as an investable asset class. You know about the Nairobi Declaration, you know about the Inflation Reduction Act and the Net Zero Industry Act and the Earthshot. Give us your view about what should we be focusing on, as some of the key pillars for the asset allocation strategy as part of this investment allocation plan to establish African green industrial infrastructure as a global investment asset class, and then the Nairobi Declaration is the equivalent of the Net Zero Industry Act or the Inflation Reduction Act, as something that really positions us to unlock the real value from the African.
Okay, is this one on? Just. Sorry, you think I hit the switch. So for context, we advise asset owners with about 16 trillion in assets on an ongoing basis, and we touch a larger community of institutional asset owners through some digital offerings to try to match up different investment opportunities with their needs. My suggestion is to position African green infrastructure as a subset of global emerging and frontier markets infrastructure and green infrastructure. And I say that because when you look at most institutional asset owners, only a subset are investing in infrastructure, only a subset are investing in private equity. They tend to start home country and then global developed market and then go on from there. So they'll get to the decision on emerging frontier markets in general before they get to an African regional mandate. And I'm also suggesting that because there's different ways that investors get to African green infrastructure. And one very strong way is just on the risk return case. The flip side of African deals, African projects, having a high cost of capital is that's a high expected return for investors. So when they put that in their asset allocation model, when we put that in their asset allocation model, the expected returns look great. The cap rates, the yields, whatever we look at looks great, highly competitive. And then from a risk standpoint, the diversification potential is huge because you're getting exposure to 54 underlying countries in a region where local economic growth is not highly correlated with most of the rest of the planet. So a huge opportunity for diversification. And I've yet, in 31 years of advising on asset allocation, yet to have investors look at the case for emerging frontier markets infrastructure, emerging frontier markets private equity, and not go ahead and do that in cases where they're already invested in developed market equivalent. That's before we get to impact. So on impact, I think the suggestion is to tell a very strong story about the marginal benefit from an impact perspective of putting the next dollar into Africa is stronger than for just about anywhere else on the planet. And in other sessions at COP, you've probably heard the amount of money going into renewable energy globally, as an example, is way up, but it's up mainly in the developed markets. And that's where we've already bent the emission curve. We need to bend the emission curve in Africa. We need to bend the emission curve more generally in developing countries. So the marginal benefit of putting the next dollar into those countries is much higher from an impact perspective. And I think having a very strong risk return thesis plus a very strong impact thesis will get the money deployed. Most of the institutional asset owners that we work with are going to come through a general partner and diversified fund, so that if they have the risk budget and tell the GP we want global emerging frontier markets exposure, some of that money will go to Africa. If they're big enough to do regional specialist mandates, then you get to the African story. But I think a prerequisite to that is just to get the allocation made to emerging frontier market infrastructure, emerging frontier market private equity, and whether it's direct investors or GPs, they'll then find the opportunities that we're talking about here.
Thank you, Rich. So now let's come and hear from Musa, as I mentioned before. He runs the largest pension fund on the African continent. So tell us, and he's obviously a great supporter of the African Union's 5% agenda, understands institutional investor-public partnerships. So from that perspective, Musa, can you just sort of give us your view about, what ideas and recommendations you think we should be putting into this investment allocation plan for the Earthshot that will catalyze more African institutional investors like yourselves, and then of course be able to hopefully crowd in more colleagues like Gunter and the global institutional investment community. Two African green infrastructures.
Thank you, Hubert. I think the most important from an institutional investor perspective, especially a pension fund, would be to uplift the infrastructure, especially green infrastructure, not from a project-based investment perspective, but make it an asset class. As already been mentioned, group all the projects and make these Africa green investments into an asset class that is investable. So going forward, we're investing in infrastructure, green infrastructure to be specific, as an investable asset class. As long-term investors, pension funds are in it for the long term. We will look into infrastructure, especially green infrastructure, addressing some of the SDGs from a partnership perspective to address some of the challenges that we're facing as a globe, but also to expect the returns that have already been mentioned over the long term. What it will do for us as a partnership is we're taking out some of the challenges that we're having in identifying individual projects, but going into an asset class that is grouped together with all the returns that have been classified for all investors, and then we look at addressing all our challenges together. So partnerships is important for us. We've demonstrated that in South Africa, where 17 of some of the largest retirement funds have pulled together funds and attack investments in infrastructure. And that has realized in 1 year, for example, we've invested $400 million in identifiable renewable projects within a space of 12 months, where that was not possible before without the partnerships that were done within the retirement fund space. So partnerships, as well as elevating green infrastructure into an asset class, that will work and be attractive for retirement funds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Now let's move to Gunther. As I mentioned, on the board of Allianz, chairs probably one of the largest, if not the largest, networks convened by the United Nations of global institutional investors, the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance. And I think the world in the global institutional market has this perspective that there just isn't really a bankable or investable at-scale pipeline of projects on the continent. So I'm really interested, and I know Gunther's been a great supporter. We've just put out, as a collective of institutional investors, a call to action statement to the key stakeholders, multilateral development banks, heads of state. We issued it just this week. It was essentially going out to, we represent about $100 trillion worth of institutional investors as part of that institutional investment group on climate change, amongst many others. So, Gunther, if you could just help us understand from your perspective how you would see the African as well as the global institutional investment community playing a different, sort of more forward-looking role in developing that pipeline of bankable transactions. As I mentioned to Pablo from the NDC partnerships, there's a very clear and specific role that we could play. You'd like a consultant to come in and advise you on your green hydrogen strategy as part of your NDCs, or you could work with an institutional investor that's probably got some of the best and most proven green hydrogen project developers in the portfolio. We believe if you sit down with us and those companies, you've potentially got the money behind the company, you've got the company with the expertise, and you can save governments, project preparation, all of the administrative issues. Do you see that type of partnership being able to deliver at scale through the likes of the Earthshot, through the likes of an institutional investor public partnership? And if so, how would we do that? So over to you. A simple question.
Thank you. You mentioned that we are 20 trillion big. This is not right, we are 10 trillion big. But we can become 20 trillion big if we do, for instance, what we discuss here, right. At least we can make a step. And that's why I'm actually sitting here. I'm not going to now explain again what the problems are. You know all these problems. The solution that we would like to offer is documented, as Google says. We have issued all kinds of position papers, how we want to work with development banks, how we want to work with project owners. And it is very much what Hubert already explained, and sorry for repeating it now. We do believe that we can be asked to work on project development. We can give support, we can give certain form of advice. We don't believe we are going to do this because afterwards we get exclusivity or are allowed to only discuss with you these projects. We fully understand that if projects are properly developed, that you of course will go out to the market and use the competitive landscape. You will auction it out, you will look for the best financing, of course you will. But we do think we should work on developing these projects together with you, because otherwise this auction out is never going to happen. This is exactly the problem that you heard right at the beginning of this panel. There is the money waiting for the project and the project waiting for the money. Yes, you know it. This is why we offer, we can work with governments on the development of project pipelines. We can go even further. If you now do think you don't want to reach out to individual investors. The Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance is convened by UN financial institutions, UN environmental program financial institutions. The secretariat of that initiative is the UN. You can contact the UN. And then some of these colleagues who are members of the Asset Owner Alliance, they are ready to work on project definition, on orchestrating who may be partners to actually join on and join in. And I repeat, this is not to be understood because then this is individual, certain selected financial institutions working on it. No, we want to first build the bridge, and then, of course, the project owners decide with who they are going to work. We do think we need to communicate this so clearly. Why? Because otherwise this gap, I repeat it again, between projects looking for money looking for projects will never be closed. So the investors need to step forward and need to be willing to give advice to help indeed to make these projects, as you will call it, bankable. And that's what we indeed put out there. Let's assume there is something like a target picture of your energy market. Let's assume you know what infrastructure pipelines you actually need to come to this infrastructure, to this energy market in 2030. Let's assume you can then talk to certain capital market participants who can give you advice how these projects can become bankable. This may be actually a solution, and there's not much more needed than what we just described in terms of reaching out to these investors. And I say there is a secretariat provided by the United Nations, so you have actually a very neutral platform to which you can reach out and talk. Is there, let's say, an investor group who can help? Mobility investing is first designing the project, make it bankable, and later on you auction out.
Thank you very much, Clinton. I think that's a very strong and compelling partnership if you're working with African pension funds, African sovereign wealth funds, and then bringing in colleagues. Right there, we have the domestic investment, and then we have the global crowding at scale. You work together from the beginning. I'm going to call on you now, Solomon. You've worked right across all of the different industries. Just to give your view on that same perspective about how asset owners in Africa and asset owners around the world potentially scale up that project pipeline component.
Thank you very much, Hubert, and thank you for the invitation. So I'm the CEO of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund based in Accra, Ghana, the country's sovereign wealth fund. And we focus on investing in infrastructure assets across Ghana. The government set us up initially with around $250 million, which is a significant investment for the country, but small compared to the needs of the country in the infrastructure space. We have now managed to raise that to double it to almost $500 million. And we've done $350 million worth of investments in infrastructure assets. Most interestingly, for every $1 that we've put in an investment, we managed to bring in $10 of other people's money to complement our investments. So when our projects are completed, there'll be over $3 billion worth of investments in infrastructure in Ghana. And the reason why I mentioned that is because that is how you have impact. You really need to leverage other sources of financing to have your impact. And the issue of money and bankable projects not meeting each other enough, I think one of the solutions is the countries in Africa now beginning to establish individual sovereign wealth funds. And those sovereign wealth funds play a very unique role. They are owned by the sovereign, so they have all the weight of the sovereign behind them. But they usually have a degree of independence to make investment decisions that are in tune with what the private sector may be more familiar with. So you get the combination of two. So as an ideal anchor partner in a country that's trying to attract capital, if the local sovereign wealth fund is well run, it's a natural place to actually anchor those investments and give those international financiers or investors comfort that they've got the backing of the sovereign, but also comfort that they're working with an institution that looks at private sector principles. And really, that's the only way you're really going to leverage the private sector to come and to fill those gaps that we spoke about. So I think that's one very important aspect of it. The second important aspect that I would really emphasize is once we build the infrastructure, once we de-risk it, and the underlying infrastructure is generating regular cash flows. We will then sell to the local pension funds and recycle our money and put it in the next project, thereby bringing the pension funds at the de-risk stage, which is then much more comfortable coming in at that stage. Let me give you an example. We're in the process of doing what will be the first major toll road project in Ghana. The initial money that's going to build the first stretch will come through the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. On completion, we will then raise funding and refinance out and bring the private sector once the tolls have been established, thereby reducing the risk for the investors later. So it's just an example of how these things can work to really leverage the public sector and the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Solomon. I'm going to move to Eric, and then I'm going to call on our dear sister Vera to just give us some of her reflections. And Eric is from CDPQ, which is probably one of the largest global infrastructure investors in the world, out of Canada. And we had a very interesting engagement on a discussion where we were from a panel in New York, and we talked about soft dynamics. When you're in the meetings and the investment committees and talking to some of your trustees, there are other issues that you think are really important. And I think one of the points that you touched on is the comfort of knowing that there is an official institution on the continent, or an official institution that has influence within the continent. I think we were talking about NDBs. And then we said that surely African pension and sovereign wealth funds, if you could go into your investment committees explaining that there's a co-investment partner, that will give a lot of confidence outside of the fundamentals of the transaction. So perhaps you might expand on that just a little bit.
Sure, thank you very much, Hubert, and thank you for the invitation to join. You're right, because there's technical challenges, and I won't repeat those. Gunter and others have addressed them. But then there's the psychological challenges, and let's consider that for a second. Pension funds tend to be intrinsically conservative bodies. They report to their boards, and they report to in our case, our depositors, because it's their money. And that conservatism leads to something of a fear of the unknown. And that's normal. I think that's a human nature that's probably pretty universal. And because of that, it takes extra convincing to bring people along to invest in new markets simply where they've never been before. They lack that experience. They lack what I like to call the 911 button. Whether, for us, we're based in Canada, we have a long-standing relationship in the United States, we have long-standing presence in Europe. When things go wrong, and things do go wrong, because if things didn't go wrong, there'd be no risk and there'd be no returns. So things will inevitably go wrong. They know who they can call. They have that 911 button. We have our series of dense relationships with governments, with other co-investors, other representatives of the private sector. And so there's a comfort with that the risks can be managed. Unfortunately, across Africa or a lot of other emerging economies, we don't have that dense network of relationships yet. And so one of the ways to try and fast track this, because to develop those is a long, almost a generational process that would take 20, 30 years. But we need to fast track that if we're going to reach the goals of 2030 and 2050. So we need to think about how to do that. And one great example, as Hubert mentioned, is partnering with local pension funds and sovereign funds in the region who have second to none knowledge of their local economies, are generally well connected to the business and political communities, and can serve as those intermediaries that can provide that comfort level to those who have very little familiarity with the market. There's other partners too. The World Bank, the multilateral development banks, even the United Nations. Even though the United Nations is not a financial institution, it has presence in virtually every developing country in the world and long-standing political ties. So thinking about clever ways of leveraging the United Nations presence to bring more comfort to institutional investors in these markets, in addition to the local pension and sovereigns, the multilateral development banks, bilateral development finance institutions or national development banks, forging those partnerships. That's sort of the shortcut to the much longer hard work that we'll need to do over 20 or 30 years to develop those dense network of relationships to bring the same level of comfort in Africa as we would in, say, the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and I think there's no one better given our extensive work in this area across so many different areas. I'm going to pull on somebody here. just to give her reflections on that and how this risk can be managed. And in a lot of cases, we don't have those 20 to 30 years. We're looking at the silver bullet for the scale right now. So Vera, please actually share your views. And don't worry, the comfort will be there for the depositors. There's a great opportunity here. Over to you, Vera.
I was just going to say that if it's 20 to 30 years, it's not an offshore, it's a crib shot. And we do need an Earthshot. No, thank you very much. Listen, I think one way of doing exactly what you said is working in partnership, and I want to thank all of you on the stage, CBDQ, AXA, and Rich from Mercer, for really, I think once you come in onto the continent with Mercer, for example, you are now putting up this platform that is going to show bankable projects, and we're working with them to help, and with Mahmoud to actually then help, get the Brookfields and the Macquaries of the world, when they go to a Mercer platform, biggest in the world guy, and they say, okay, this guy is putting up this project, that is already that part of the credibility that comes immediately. And I was shocked, at Onga to see the number of people in the room because Mercer called them. We would, they would come. And so really, I just want to thank you really, because what you're solving is this sort of, we don't have projects on the continent problem. If I had put up the platform, if the UN had put up the platform and it was work with Mahmoud and many others that did it, people will not go to that page. But they go to your page immediately. And as the CEO doing this, I think for us it's really important. I think that this is what we're looking for. The same thing with AXA and Niels on the insurance side. We just released a report, so I didn't do my 2 minutes publicity on the report, but it's more for the Egyptian COP and for the UAE COP. And out of this report came the finance declaration and the $30 billion that was done by His Excellency Sultan, and the 4.5 billion is part of the conversation that is in here. And I'll give you the thing, it was co-chaired by Lord Stern. But the finance declaration that was done at the COP with all the big countries is part of this report. And what we say there is that we need guarantees, we need to de-risk. But the best de-risking tool is actually getting a Mazda, getting a ANOC, getting a Amir Power to come and open an industry on the continent that buys those and produces, Mazda is never going to go out of business, and they will be producing solar panels for the next 25 years. So if there was an industry on the continent that was working to produce those solar panels and Mazda was the offtake, we would not need guarantees, we would not need de-risking, we would not need credit enhancement. All of those things would be Mazda. Mazda would be our off-taker. And immediately he would have de-risked everything that we're doing. And I think that is what is called the Earthshot and the green industrial conversation, is we don't want to bring our minerals here. I mean, you walk around and you see all the steel that is happening here, and you think about Egypt, and you think about Mauritania, the iron ore that they're producing, and the steel that is being produced there. We could trade, but we're not trading. And if we start trading and producing on the continent, the reason why our utilities are not doing so well is that there is no business that is buying the energy from the utilities. There is no people that have jobs so that they can pay for the energy from the utilities. So we need governments to provide subsidies, and then we need MDBs to de-risk it and to guarantee it. But the model at the origin is wrong. And so until we fix the model at the origin, and Hubert, I think, thank you very much to President Ruto and everybody that is doing that. If we don't fix that supply chain, it does not work. And really happy that the UAE presidency has taken this up as a key part of what they're pushing. And so thank you, Hubert, for putting this conversation on the agenda, Mahmoud, Nados, everybody that is here, but also to you institutional investors. We don't have the 40 years. But I think as you work with us, the other thing that we must do is do all of this in local currency so that we don't take the huge FX risk that we're taking, which makes it even more difficult for us to do the projects that your toll road, the people who are going to be driving on that toll road are going to be paying you in Ghanaian cedis and not in dollars. If you go to the market and borrow in dollars, it becomes immediately expensive when the Fed tightens, because that immediately triples your borrowing cost. These are the things that we need to begin to work on to make sure that this Earthshot really becomes, something that we can see in 2 years when we meet in 2030 at the Brazilian COP, that we have actually deployed the UAE resources and are beginning to see some concrete results. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you also for your leadership. We are one family. We are one family. Public, private. We just want to get this Earthshot done. And I think with those wise words, I think we've created a perfect segue into our next session where we can actually begin to see some concrete examples. We're talking about solar panels that could be manufactured in Africa and on the continent. We may very well hear the same story from the next panel about it already happening and of course scaling with the likes of others can only add to giving practical expression to what an Earthshot really means in dollars, rand, cents, and local currency. So thank you everybody. Please join me in a big round of applause for our speakers here. Everyone asks, where's the institutional investment community? Where's the pension funds? Where's the global institutional investors? I think this was just the beginning of demonstrating to you, how much of a strong part we already have in us. So thank you very much. Over to you, MC.
Thank you so much to our speakers. I feel like I was listening in on a masterclass for how to bridge the gap between projects and investments and projects around green infrastructure while meeting different types of investors where they were. Truly, thank you all for those thoughts and comments. And Hubert, of course, thank you to you for your tenacity, for your vision, for your tireless commitment to getting us to this point. So as Hubert said, we've now heard about some pledges, we've heard about commitments of finance, commitments of investment from our introductory speakers. In the second panel, we just heard about how we bridge the gaps between investment and projects. Some of you in the audience might be wondering, what exactly are those projects? Where do they exist? And how do we scale the project pipeline? So we're going to move into another panel session, but this one is actually a showcase panel. It's more than just a panel, it's a showcase panel, where we're going to talk about projects at the country, regional, and Pan-African level that act as investment initiatives for the Earthshot. I'm going to invite none other than Dr. Kande Yimkela to the stage, the former United Nations Under-Secretary General and the Special Representative of the Secretary General for the Sustainable Energy for All. Kande is obviously a person who ran and many in the room. Kande, welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much. This is the action session. Many times people say we don't see the projects, we don't know what they are. So I'll just call folks out. This is meant to be short. They give you an example of what they do. They'll still be on stage in case people are interested for more details. But we're going to do it in rapid fire. Let me thank Hubert, Adnan, and others who worked with us this 1 year to make sure we do this. This is not the end. In fact, it is the beginning of many beginnings. So I call immediately to the stage Raza Hasnani, Managing Director, Africa 50. Dr. Mahmoud Mohideen, UN Climate Change High-Level Champion for COP27. Dr. Lazarus Abanzo, CEO Infraco. Banjira Mathai, Managing Director of World Resources Institute. Hussein Al-Muaz, Chairman, AMIA Power. Dr. Christian John, Green City Alliance. Same Senuda, Chief Investment Officer, AFC. Thank you. Sergio Pimenta, Regional Vice President for Africa International Finance Corporation. Represented by Mohammed Goulet. Mohammed is in the room. Please come in, Mohammed. And Imeka Ogabi, Regional Director, Africa Sustainability. Our seat is full. I'll call some others as we move on. I'll start with Dr. Mahmoud Mohideen, Mahmoud, we want examples. You and I have known each other some time ago. You have worn many hats. What are some of these abstract examples so other countries can dream, imagine, and be creative and replicate them all? Just design something new.
Right. Thank you so much. And I'll give you practical examples of that difficult question that was raised in the previous panel. That about the two questions on both, they are right. We have the projects where the assets and the flows of funds. We have the assets and the flows of funds where are the projects. So this is a matchmaking exercise on capacity development. And the story goes as such. Directly after the announcement of the GFANs, the preparation for COP27 was underway. I was asked to coordinate the work of the non-state actors as climate champion. This is the role that I've been doing with Nigel Topping and then with Razan Mubarak of UAE. And our job is to be facilitators and to try to find solutions and not to brag about the gaps. So the practical answer to that, I had a discussion with Mark Carney with his famous piece on the country platforms with 6 prerequisites for finance and the promise of the GFANs of $130 trillion to flow to the developing economies and emerging markets. And he put macroeconomic stability, financial development, deep financial markets. And sorry, Mohammed, because you heard part of that yesterday, but I'm repeating it for the rest of the audiences, specific Africa. And then he went into the issues related to exchange rate volatility and how to deal with that. He went as well into issues related to business environment and matters related to rule of law and governance. And then pipeline of banking and industrial projects. And actually, first time we heard about this serious issue of the banking and industrial projects, this was around the same time we met in 2010 when Korea was hosting G20. So it's an old question, not just for Africa, but for the rest of the world. Don't take offense on that. I said that as an African, I was a Minister of Investment for Egypt for many years. I'm proud that my record hasn't been broken to attract net FDI of 9.9% of GDP. In the case of Egypt, if we continue doing that, this is more than $45 billion of net FDI. So I know a bit about issues related to business environment, but definitely just to be fair to my fellow ministers in Egypt now, the global and regional environment is not really as good and benign as it used to be. Always put that issue of politics, political economic dynamics in consideration. But back to Mark Carney's list. I said, well, this is a perfect list, my good friend Mark, in the sense of the man. Why don't we go by pipeline of bankable projects? And that can lead us to the reforms. And we reform as we go. And we have the example that, for instance, from Egypt, in Bimba, this is one of the biggest solar farms in the world, competing with many other projects in Africa today, with projects in Kenya. There was an announcement of one in Ethiopia just yesterday. Morocco is doing the Ouazzazat. And here the model is simple. You have a serious project with potential finance, but then the business environment may not be perfect. But you go to the ministers and tell them, well, I have the money, I have the assets. And then we have the incentives. If you start to do 1, 2, 3, you'll be getting part of these billions and trillions of assets flowing to your country. So the minister with his government will start to negotiate these tough areas of tariff reforms, offtake agreements, dealing with some sectoral challenges. But if you go and to tell the minister of government, yeah, pave the road for me, and then we will consider in that high competition kind of environment that we may consider investment for you, they may not say, well, thank you so much, we need to survive in our business. These reforms that you are asking us to do are very much tough and controversial, but here it's basically reform as you go. Did that work only for Egypt? It worked for a pipeline of not just bankable, because the climate action agenda is full of debt and we are overwhelmed by debt. What we need is the proper mix of energy. Perhaps energy can flow in as well. Yeah, proper mix of energy between debt instruments and private equity with support of public-private partnerships. So this has been a model supported by private sector investors with multilateral development banks behind it, with the government of Egypt doing the work. But this is the ultimate, perhaps, kind of partnership that we did in building what I encourage you please to read, the Assets to Flows report. It's available.
Mohammed, in 1 minute, will you not be accused of tailoring the reforms to one entity?
No,
How do you guard against that?
this is a competitive practice. And actually, the very project in the solar plants of Egypt is not just for the big players and the big conglomerates. You have medium-sized enterprises, you have mega projects of investors. And I like to encourage you, please, read the pipeline of investable projects in the case of Africa. And many of the project managers, project owners are with us here today. And this is basically for those who say that we don't have bankable investable projects, we have 408 confirmation that you are wrong. There are bankable investable projects in different stages of development ready for your engagement in the field. A couple of days ago, we were in an African meeting. President Rotovic took the stage and he demonstrated, we were in that meeting when he started to list opportunities country by country, project by project. I'm happy and proud that many of these projects are already in our pipeline. Simple stuff don't make the perfect anymore. The good, be practical, and the Earthshot need to borrow something from the moonshot. By having a timeline, specific targets, but more important, specific team to deliver, not to be generic and not to be extra in the time that you are after in order to achieve these targets. You need to have these specific targets within a manageable time and specific team to be accountable for. Good luck in implementing the assets of flows.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Raza, you are our 911 call. Somebody whispered to me, the Canadians were asking, do we have a 911 number for Africa? Africa 50.
Thank you. I guess in a way we are, but perhaps let me just give you a little bit of context on who Africa 50 is. So Africa 50 is an investment platform for infrastructure which has been operational for about 6 years. We are owned by 30 African countries, 3 central banks and the African Development Bank, and they created us and purpose-built us so that Africa could grow and build its infrastructure under the control of Africans. So that was the main aim. And we have, although we are owned by these countries, they have deliberately and with a lot of foresight made our investment committee independent. Let me repeat that. They made our investment committee independent. So we make investments which are independent of political interference. So investments that make commercial sense. Over 6 years, I believe we have done projects which have a total value of over $6 billion total funding. And we have done a lot of projects. It's across the continent. I think one thing that has been talked about quite a bit that I'll address before I get to the 911 call is this issue that some people say there's not enough projects, other people say there's not enough funding. And this is a bit of a chicken and egg story. But if you really get down to this, what is the actual issue? As a lifelong financier, I know that a positive IRR project will always attract capital. So there is no shortage of capital. If you have a positive IRR project, capital will find you. You don't need to go look for capital. So the issue is that it's difficult to find positive IRR projects. So Africa 50 has built in-house a project development team, which is highly resourced as opposed to many companies which do not have those resources. And we build projects from the ground up also. And when those projects are built without cutting corners, then the business I run invests the late stage equity into it. So that is a way of getting this done. Now, the real problem really is, and this is something where MDBs can come in, is the problem is that, as Vera said, the ultimate customer often does not have the ability to pay for the service or the goods that are to be provided. So that's where blended finance comes in, that's where MDB support comes in. Those are very, very important. I'll just give a sense of how we are able to sort of de-risk projects. So, look, even though governments own us, they're not going to do us any special favors, and we are not going to ask for any special favors. But the perception of risk in Africa is far greater than the reality of risk in Africa. Okay, in fact, in my experiences in Africa with ministers, with my good fortune with heads of state, people are all business. They are very focused on tasks, way more oftentimes than in other countries that I have seen. So that is there. What we are able to do is provide that connectivity and access. So we have lots of portfolio companies. And if one of our portfolio companies has an issue, we're not going to solve the problem for them. The government will not solve the problem for them. But we have the ability to get them in touch with the right people who will look at it. And if it is reasonable, to address the issues. So I would say that's how we are a potential 911.
Rather, it is part of the problem, not the rating company. The rate was so low that people already imagined that we're so risky.
Perhaps, but then
That's the view of Mo Ibrahim.
No, so
if you were here, that's why we wanted you here.
I'd like to say that capital and rating companies are agnostic. They don't have an ideology. Okay, they're not out there to get anyone. The issue is, for example, if you have an FX issue, okay, now the basic rule of project finance is that any risk should be held, should be owned by the entity that's best able to cover it. It's very difficult for a foreign investor to take steady risk. Okay, so there we have to find the right entity who takes that risk. And if we find the right entity, which could be an NDB, okay, it could be one of these sovereigns who are trying to build out infrastructure in Africa. If they are going to own that risk, perhaps the ratings won't be that low.
Lazarus, you are partnering with the EU Africa Green Industrialization Solar. Give us an answer from your standpoint.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and co-panelists. So the Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria is a government-backed equity infrastructure fund that is managed by the private sector, structured as a hybrid of both a fund of funds but also can invest directly. The inspiration for this fund is that in Nigeria, the need for infrastructure is about 100 billion a year. The government is spending about 20% of that. The private sector with lots of pension for the city on defense. Yet, the country understands, similar to what the summit is saying, there's no growth without industrialization, there's no growth without sustainable infrastructure. So the idea behind Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria is actually to crowd in that private capital. It was seeded with $2 billion in local currency equivalent and projected to attract another $15 billion over the next 5 years, again in local currency, to solve the issue of the asymmetry between FX and local currency earning infrastructure assets. Now, the mandate goes across all of the key verticals, and in Nigeria, we say we live in darkness, not because the country hasn't invested in power. It has invested in tremendous amount of infrastructure, but yet it's not working. And so now it is projected to be one of the largest off-grid electricity markets on the continent. But how do you do that without falling into the same trap? So we thought maybe the best thing is to actually begin to invest in the underlying supply chain itself. So the project that we announced, even right here on COP28, was to partner with the largest European manufacturer of lightweight solar panels that are made out of plastics. And because Nigeria is blessed with petrochemicals, it can leverage all of the feedstock
from the local industry. It unlocks the recycling industry, it unlocks the recycling economy. It actually leverages all of the recycled plastics and the virgin plastics, and this product is going to be fully recyclable at the end of life. So it is low carbon, it is lightweight, and it actually allows us to complement what we have on the grid. And this is a partnership between a Dutch government and the Pan-African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank. InfraCorp is going to take the equity in it, and once the project is actually mature and de-risked completely, it will refinance it by bringing in the private capital, similar to what we heard at the example. So we're very, very excited about this project because it provides a template for how we do industrialization, infrastructure that is sustainable, climate resilient, but also leverages the local supply chain and localizes the capacity for making the investment and the entire off-grid electricity industry very sustainable and more competitive and supports industrialization broadly. So that's the example we have.
The president was on the panel on the industrialization with President Ruto, but for me, I know now we are getting an Excel panels on my 200 minutes. Mind you, he just gave us an example of using our local assets, but I know you know that we have all of those green assets, and I see the picture here on the Earthshot. Should we leverage those as well? But I know you have other things to say, but all of that green asset, we're the biggest lungs of the world. Shouldn't that mean some real good de-risking?
It absolutely should. I must say a lot of what has been said before applies, and in fact what Vera said about the need for jobs, the need for the employment and economic muscle is really what the Africa investment shot is about. I mean, we have a confluence of significant things happening on the African continent. We are told the best solar potential in the world, but unfortunately, the funds and money is not flowing where the sun shines. Less than 2% of all investments in solar globally flow to the African continent. That has to be part of the Earthshot. You look at the green manufacturing critical minerals needed for the renewable energy sector, cobalt, coltan, majority of those assets found on the African continent. And the commodity side alone of that value chain, valued at about 7 billion, is where we've played historically. But this Earthshot is demanding that we move up that value chain closer to the 11 trillion that is the value of the critical minerals manufacturing side. And then, of course, the workforce. Nowhere in the world is there a faster and younger workforce. That's as to be found on the African continent. That has to be at the heart of this Earthshot. And then, my personal favorite, the largest restoration potential in the world. One of the things that the African Investment Earthshot is going to focus on, responding to the needs of the African continent, not necessarily looking farther. In fact, when you look at most of the successful entrepreneurs worldwide, they always respond to a local need, a local gap. What do we need? How do we fill that gap? We have the resources, we have the workforce, and begin to address that. And the restoration opportunity is significant. We're starting to see at the World Resources Institute through Restore Local, an initiative that is largely local but now going regional, and then of course with global partnership, that there are real opportunities in tree-based businesses, opportunities in the valuable nuts like macadamia, cashew, and others like gamma arabica, secret ingredients in some of the beverages that we consume. A lot of these resources will be part of what the Africa Investment Earthshot looks into.
Thank you very much. The same Noas, Mia Paul was not here, okay. Dr. Christine Jean, Green City Alliance. What's your pitch?
I think it's working. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the time to speak. My pitch, Chris, I work for United Cities, although I'm very excited to be part of Dr. Danso's work and the Just Transition Investors Alliance efforts towards green industrial cities. I would start simply by saying that we don't invest in projects, we invest in communities. And there's something about that approach, the very idea about the green industrial city that needs to be unpacked from the community level up, as well as from the macro level investment perspective down. And let me give you a few examples. I mean, I come from a country that less than 100 years ago was doing worse than Africa south of Sahara. And we're now amongst one of the richest people ever to live. And this happened in the lifetime of my grandparents. So obviously there's something there that we can share, and we can even speak about condensing this time. So when we work with the Just Transition Investors Alliance, it's really about understanding what do you bring to communities, especially communities that have all these resources, all these young people aspiring to not have someone pay for electricity, but to have a job and pay for their own electricity. That's the future of this discussion, right? No one's going to pay for the power systems of Africa. Africans are going to pay for the power systems of Africa. Africans are going to build these systems. But unless you tackle that question of what are the constituent elements of these green industrialized cities, bottom up and top down, you will never have a serious conversation about the pipeline of investable projects. I'll give you a couple of examples. Back home, less than 5 years ago, we asked, how can we make our city of about 200,000 people?
And home is where?
Home is in Norway. And then increasingly it's in the Middle East, and recently it's been more in Egypt, I'm afraid. I mean, my family is complaining. So we asked ourselves questions like, how can we make a city produce more clean, renewable and affordable energy than it consumes? And the capacity not just to ask these questions, but organize the types of public-private partnerships that this takes. Mobilize the capital, draw in the technology, work on the frameworks, legal frameworks, work with the communities, rethink the business models, meant that in less than 5 years we were able to pull this off. And we thought, okay, if that works in Norway, I mean, we're not smarter than anyone else, to be honest. Right? I mean, the cat's out of the bag. So we went to, let's turn to somewhere really hard, Lebanon. 1 hour of electricity per capita per day. Very bizarre in a country that's so blessed with sunshine and natural resources and some of the best educated people in the world. Same thing, less than 12 months. A co-op of citizens are able to rethink their energy system, build a local grid, use through a technology, or more specifically an energy corridor, access to technology, to knowledge, to business models.
Just to give people who don't know AFC some kind of background, we are a multilateral. We're owned by African governments and African banks. We started 16 years ago with $1 billion that was gathered by a number of governments to fill the infrastructure gap. In 16 years, it has been a fantastic success story. Our balance sheet now is $12 billion. We have grown tremendously. We have been profitable every single year since we were created. We have distributed dividends every single year for the last 10 years. And we aspire to become a $20 billion company in the next 4 or 5 years. Now, I want to take you from the billions and trillions to how we get things done on the ground. One important point, we're the second highest rated institution in all of Africa. We actually provide guarantees to African governments to save on their Eurobonds instead of going to the markets borrowing at 15, 16%. They can save 800, 900 basis points, but that's a separate issue. But you were talking about rating. So I want to give you a few examples of actual projects on the ground. And these projects are difficult, but our attitude is that we are not a checkbook. We are solution providers. And that's why I lost my hair. It's, it's so difficult to do projects in Africa, but it's also a very profitable process. So let me start with renewable energy first. 3 years ago, we had three renewable assets across all of Africa, and we said there is no way we will be that small in renewable energy. We have to be the largest player in Africa. And the way to do this is there's a number of things. One, to find the right partners. Two, to have a mixed strategy of acquisitions, early stage development, turning concept papers into bankable projects and executing on them. Fast forward 3 years, we are the largest renewables player in Africa because we partnered with the right partners. We have Masdar as a partner, we have the Mansour family from Egypt, and we have EBRD. We made acquisitions in the projects that Dr. Mahmoud mentioned, the most successful solar project in Egypt. And now we have 15 operating assets with cash flows in South Africa, in Senegal, in Egypt, and Djibouti. But then we also, on the problem-solving kind of example, Djibouti imports half of its power from Ethiopia and imports diesel to burn to produce the second half of its power. We have worked with the government to build a wind farm that was inaugurated last month with the president of Djibouti. And the way we did this is that we said there are two ways to do it. One is go the normal route, which is develop the project finance, invite banks, etc., and then take 2-3 years to build it. Or we went in with our equity, we did 100% equity investment into the project, got it done in 2 years' time, and now Djibouti has 50% of its power that is green and has saved a lot of foreign exchange from importing either diesel or power. If we go to the critical minerals, which is the second example, 30 to 40% of every single mineral in a battery, in an electric vehicle, is in Africa. Copper, cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, all of these are in Africa. And it varies from having underneath our feet 30% of the world capacity up to 90%. 80% of the electric vehicle manufacturers are in China. So what happens is that Africa exports rock, effectively, that has 3-4% of the raw material, all the way to China. China produces the electric vehicle and then sells it all the way back to the US and to Europe, etc. One final example, we also, as a problem solver, we look for how do we solve for corridors. So for example, we have a manganese mine, or we have, for example, a forest in Gabon, or cashew nuts or cotton in Togo and Benin. We build special economic zones, but then if you build special economic zones to attract industries, to add value, you need to transport the raw materials. So we also build rail and roads. You get to the industrial zone, but then you have the final product that you need to export. So we also build ports to be able to export the product. So it's all about how do you find the solution, not how do you fund the project. Thank you.
Well, I hope you will give me your telephone number because I'm going to call the president of Zambia and say we have the guy who's going to build the battery factory. As he talked about his nickel. He said, people talk about my copper. He said, but they don't know what else I have. Nickel is one of them, and they need it for their batteries.
We're building for him, and that's
fantastic.
I was with him last month.
Again, that's a wonderful example, but that's what Nigeria and our sister Vera was saying. We want to add value. We don't just want to do 17th century shipping the raw products. Sergio Pimenta is not here, but Mohammed is here. Mohammed, IFC. You hear before you speak. You hear the ambition. We're thinking big now. IFC, we want you to be big as well. Follow our ambition. What's your pitch?
So thank you, everyone, and I think a lot has been said. And I would like to maybe contribute to the additional points to the debate. So we talked a little bit about bankability, and we talked about projects that are looking for that money and money that's looking for the projects. And believe it or not, we face exactly the same dilemma in certain markets, mostly Africa. a few years ago, and we set out to solve for this problem. And what we decided to do was not to wait for promoters until they come to us and bring a project that's bankable. What we have set ourselves is let's create an upstream investment vehicle where we deploy our own money to actually originate projects, invite promoters, spend money in the pre-feasibility stage. And if that converts into a project ultimately, that promoter, we will be able to convert some of that investment we made up front into warrants or some kind of equity ourselves. Today, about 25% of our project pipeline comes from that upstream pipeline that we create. So it's you can wait, but you can also go and yourself become a promoter. So that was one way to look at it. Another topic that has come up quite a bit is risk, and it's something that I hear very often, and I'm actually not a big fan of the word risk. What I would like to say is reducing the bankability gap that is inherent in a project for a number of reasons. It could be because of technology that's new, it could be because of risk, it could be because of scale, and you're starting small and you're not going to get to profitability until certain scale is reached, or a number of other reasons. Where I would appeal to governments and say you should not use concessional money for is to reduce the bankability risk that's associated with policy or regulatory risks. That one is one that governments can take care of, and nobody has to pay for. So my idea would be governments need to create a living environment and remove or reduce the risk that's associated with the policy or regulatory matters. What I would also like to perhaps add here is that bankability is, again, we look at local currency financing, we've talked about foreign exchange risk. And let me share with you, at IFC we have 60% of our capital that's actually allocated to our equity book. That equity book is 100% in local currency. So when we invest equity in Nigeria, we take Naira risk. When we invest equity in Kenya, we take Kenya shilling risk. So we have been taking foreign exchange risk on our equity book, which is significant over the last 50 years. You do indeed are subject to the volatility of currency markets. But if you have a good investment that gives you growth, you will make up for that, for that foreign exchange risk. And I think what we have to be very careful here is that the solution to all problems associated with foreign exchange risk should be to come up with some kind of concessional finance and eliminate that way. Investments have to be made, and especially equity investments, with the understanding that you are subject to. Just like I'm saying to the governments, you have to remove the regulatory and policy risks. Investors have to be able to have that appetite to take some of the foreign exchange risk.
Thank you. You have one?
I was just maybe going to add our own investments this past year. We have invested $2.8 billion in climate in FY23, fiscal year 23 IFC, in Africa. And 46% of our investments go out in the climate space. So there's a huge potential that's to be had here. I would like to though say that pension funds and life insurance and asset managers in Africa need to invest in projects that are productive and invest more there and invest a little bit less in government bonds and treasury bills that are paying for current year expenditure. That's where you need to go. Invest in productive assets.
If I may just probe that for one minute with you and Mohammed, how do we do that? They are buying treasury bonds, treasury. None of them are investing home. Not in the energy space anyway. What do we do? 1 minute. What should we do? What should we tell our presidents to do?
I think the extent governments have to maybe have a bit more.
Should we legislate?
No, legislation does not work. But fiscal policy discipline helps.
Fiscal policy.
And then you see money flowing.
Okay, that's good. But practically, shouldn't we say to our own national pension fund, our own national insurance company, that look, my friend, in 2 years, 5%, we're not saying 100, just 5%, you should follow our other banks and really put in key green infrastructure that are bankable. We're not saying charity. Shouldn't we legislate that?
But Africa 50 is doing that.
Africa 50 is doing that.
Yeah. So
Africa
I'm
50
very
is
glad
10%.
to see that Africa 50 has mobilized pension fund money. And this is actually a good start. I wish
My brother from Nigeria was saying it's not enough. But anyway, Mohammed?
It's Sam. But I think we've done the calculation. If only 1% of African pension funds are put in infrastructure in Africa, that's in excess of $50-60 billion a year. So we don't need more than 1%.
Okay, so 1%.
So yeah, but it's not easy because it's much simpler to put your money in U.S. government bonds. But we were able to get the PIC from South Africa to put money into AFC, but it's not straightforward.
They joke that the reason I'm militant is Adnan said to me, Kanye, since you moved to the other side, the executive side, now you're more militant than you were when you were US diplomat. I have to be because now I see reality. Talk, but then I see, wait a minute, there are pockets of money sitting. People tell me there are no projects. I see the projects. There's something missing here. So we Africans, there's something else we should do. Yes, we'll get the policy right. But maybe we need to do a little bit more. A few mandates. In the US, I saw mandates when I was teaching there, and people followed those mandates in a transparent way. Well, we have two final panelists, Ahmed Mullah, Deputy CEO, Infinity Power. You need the mic? Give us an answer. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. My name is Ahmed Mullah. I'm the Deputy CEO of Infinity Power. I'd like to thank Mr. Sameh Shinoda for mentioning our contribution and, of course, having shareholders like Africa Finance Corporation and Masdar gives us the perfect mix and backing in order for us to achieve our ambitions and desires. So, who are Infinity Power? Infinity Power is a platform that has been created by the illustrious shareholders with a vision of delivering cheap, affordable, sustainable, green electricity to Africa. Our ambition is to be the largest renewable energy player, and right now we have installed 1,300 megawatts of renewable energy projects. That's in Egypt, in South Africa, and Senegal. We have a very healthy pipeline of 13.8 gigawatts. That's in several African countries. We will be making an announcement with Africa 50 later on. I won't be spoiling the announcement by giving too much information, but we have an active pipeline, and in order for us to achieve this pipeline, we have to work very hard. We have to work on bridging the bankability gaps. We have to ensure that policy and regulation is there, that gives us and international lenders the comfort to work on these projects, but as well, our focus is on the communities. We can't live with the communities for 25, 30 years without actually being good neighbors. So, for example, in Senegal, we have invested in a marketplace, in an IT center that predominantly serves the female cohorts. We are graduating over 1,500 students yearly. We're helping skilling up with transferable skills. So it's not just about renewable energy. We want to make sure that our contribution is positive. It's positive to Africa, it's positive to the environment, to the communities, and ensuring that Africa gets the electricity that it desperately needs in order to unlock its economic potential. I myself, I'm from Sudan, I am African, and it pains me to see my country at the moment not achieving its potential because of its lack of bankable policies in order to mobilize the funds necessary to invest in energy. This energy is needed for mining, for agriculture, for industry. And if we have that energy, we can reach and aspire to be amongst first world countries. And I believe that the time for Africa is now. We have all the components of success. We have educated populations. We have the knowledge, the capability, financing is available. We have the mix of...
So let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. There is nothing that stops us from doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close with Emeka. Emeka Randui, Regional Director, Sustainable Energy for All. Are you here? I don't see Emeka. So, well, panelists have shown us that it is possible. They've given us real examples. That's what we wanted. COP28 is about action. There's more in the pipeline. We know that it is doable. It's all about scale, and we hope that we want to assure you that for us, the Africa Earthshot is a continuum. We will continue doing this. We'll take this back to COP29, but we want to do something intervening a period. We didn't want to wait till each COP to do something, and what we're understanding with Adnan and Sultan El Jabbar is we continue these conversations, possibly even regionally. But the idea is to make deals, to take this message to the sub-regions, see if we can also help to facilitate deals that can make a real transformation happen. At this point, I want us to thank our panel. And then I'll give the hand over to Dr. Rebecca. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yukala, for that rousing showcase of opportunities across the continent. Folks, friends, I hope that you've learned a little something here this afternoon. Hope that you're beginning to see and understand the weight and the importance of this moment. What we're doing here in this room right now is we're taking the first steps towards establishing African green infrastructure as a formal, legitimate, robust investment class for the continent and for the world. This is a huge moment. I want to thank all of you for your participation, for your interest, for your attention. I want to, of course, thank Dr. Danso, Huber Danso, Dr. Kanda Yumkela for pushing so hard to get us to this moment. What we're doing is we're positioning African cities, African urban corridors, African peri-urban communities as ready to produce clean, green commodities for themselves and for the world. As was just said, moving from the raw material export market to a market that leverages the continent's abundance to add value in clean, low-carbon ways that work for people, that work for nature, and that work for the climate. We're going to shift gears now and begin awarding and acknowledging progress that has been made thus far. We're going to be rewarding the governments and the institutions and individuals that are driving transactions that are already beginning to show how we move towards a space of investability. So as you can see from the flow so far, we've begun this afternoon hearing from the COP presidency about important announcements and commitments. We've heard from our institutional investors in the first panel, both domestic and international, from finance corporations and funds and developers in the second. We're beginning to see a pipeline over the course of this afternoon of how we practically move ourselves towards a place where Africa is ready to take on its own investment potential. We are very excited about the Africa Investment Earthshot and this institutional investor public partnership that is beginning to evolve, and now we want to begin acknowledging and awarding those who are beginning to make it a reality. I do want to acknowledge that in the audience we have with us some important dignitaries. We have the former president of the Republic of Malawi, Her Excellency Joyce Banda is in the audience. And we have His Excellency Hage Geingob, the President of the Republic of Namibia. Thank you so much, both of you, for your presence. It's truly an honor. I'm now going to hand over to your MC for the second part of today, Mr. Hubert Wuzigiza, the Senior Manager for African Public Finance and Partnership at SIF. Hubert, over to you. Thank you all so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, heads of states, honorable ministers, ambassadors representing your countries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Hubert Wuzigiza. I'm a senior advisor in climate finance for various public and private entities, including managing partnerships and public finance for the Children Investment Fund Foundation for Africa. Welcome to this award ceremony. A bit of background on the Africa NDC Investment Awards, which started actually last year in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt during the COP27. As you probably understand, the Africa Earthshot epitomizes really everything we're trying to do in terms of investments for the Africa Green Industrialization Plans, the Just Transition, Green Investors Alliance, pipelines developments for industrial green cities, African carbon markets initiatives, all those major pillars that we pushed for at the Africa Climate Summit. And everything was a continuity when everything was starting in Paris at the Global Financial Pact for the reforms of the international agenda. So it's a continuity, and as we have to mobilize more than $3 trillion by the year 2030, both in adaptations and mitigation, it was important for us actually to recognize the efforts of leaders and countries. Leaders of countries, leaders of institutions, public and private, in making sure that we're mobilizing the right investments. That's why we came up with the NDC Awards. And the NDC Awards are within various categories that are representing the NDCs. We are quite happy today we will award project promoters, but also celebrating efforts at country levels. In order to mobilize private capital at scale and at speed, it's really important that as country leaders, as institutional leaders, that we, but also as part of the NDP and the financing committees at large, that we try to make developments more investable, rather to make investment developmental. So I repeat, we don't want to make investment developmental, but rather development needs to be investable. That's the only way you can create the momentum among the different partners so that ultimately, be it in sustainable agriculture, green transport, green cities, we will be able to de-risk by having the right vehicle, blended investment vehicles, so that we can reach our goals of making the transition for the green economy in Africa and achieve the 3 trillion of investments on the continent. Without further ado, I want to start by the first sets of awards, and we want to have the first sets in the presidential awards. So I would like to call upon there's no music for the announcements, but it's okay. Yeah. So I want to call upon the representative of the government of Sierra Leone. This is the Presidential Agriculture Investment Statements of the year for agriculture. Dr. Kande Yunkela, former United Nations Under Secretary General and Special Representative for the UNSG, SC for All. Please come to the stage here, Dr. Hubert.
I have some sisters.
So this is the Presidential Agriculture Investment Statements Award. Dr. Kande Yunkela, current advisor to the President and former United Nations Under Secretary General, is receiving the awards. Congratulations, clap for him for. On behalf of the President, Dr. Kande Yunkela.
Okay. On behalf of His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio, my colleagues and I received this award in his stead. If he were here, I have no doubt he would have dedicated it to the people of Sierra Leone. The President has made his second term. He just started 5 months into his second term. His flagship is to feed our people. His food security is his #1 priority. In his first term, it was free education. He added 1 million more kids to schools for free, and paying for them, paying for their school fees, but also giving them books and learning materials. Now he set another target to feed our people and to make sure we eat what we produce. But we know our country sits on a lot of minerals that everybody wants. The purest deposit of titanium in the world and second largest deposit. We're sitting on 22 billion tons of iron ore. We've just discovered lithium as well, to mention just a few. 8 million people. With our green assets as well, we're supposed to be super rich. And yes, with the Earthshot, he's very ambitious. He wants to do 300 megawatts more of renewable energy, and he wants to do 200 mini-grids over the next 5 years. So the investors who are in the room, you have a good partner, we're ready for you. And yes, whatever policy change you need, let us know, but we'll deliver. My president is ready. And on his behalf, I say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kande. So now, I would like to acknowledge the award for the Presidential Carbon Investment Initiative Statement of the Year. It goes to His Excellency President Denis Sassou Nguesso from Congo. Please, we have the representative of President Sassou Nguesso, Her Excellency Arlette Soudan Nono, Minister of Environment, Sustainable Development and Congo Basin, Republic of Congo. Donc, Madame la Ministre, nous vous invitons sur le podium pour recevoir l'award de votre président. The carbon initiative is definitely an important one because it represents all the effort that Congo Basin is doing in preserving the forests in the Congo Basin. Another round of applause for Congo, the Republic of Congo Brazzaville. Excellence, si vous voulez donner un petit remarque.
Je vais peut-être à ce stade si quelqu'un peut traduire. Excellences, Monsieur le chef d'État, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, chers tous, comme il a été dit, je suis la ministre de l'Environnement, du Développement durable et du bassin du Congo, et je suis également, parallèlement, dans le portefeuille ministériel depuis 7 ans, j'assure la coordination également des 16 pays du bassin du Congo. La commission climat du bassin du Congo, à la tête de laquelle il y a le président Sassou Nguesso, qui porte donc les 16 pays du bassin du Congo. Et le bassin du Congo venait de tenir à Brazzaville récemment le sommet des 3 grands bassins forestiers de la planète et de biodiversité, à savoir le bassin du Congo, le bassin de l'Amazonie et le Bornéo Mekong récemment, parce que les 3 bassins, c'est des écosystèmes forestiers. Nous concentrons 80% donc des forêts et un quart de la biodiversité. Et aujourd'hui, ce prix qui est décerné au président Sassou Nguesso, le touche énormément, puisqu'il m'a autorisé à venir le recevoir en son nom ici. Le touche énormément parce que depuis Rio+20, c'est un grand leader engagé dans la cause de façon globale du climat, de la protection de l'environnement et de la biodiversité. Et aujourd'hui, ce prix est une reconnaissance vraiment de ce combat qu'il mène vraiment avec beaucoup d'énergie, parce que lorsque vous prenez le bassin du Congo déjà, qui séquestre 1,5 milliard de tonnes de CO2 déjà, et que vous mettez à côté de cela les tourbières, en anglais les putains, du bassin du Congo, et ben c'est 31 milliards de tonnes de CO2. Je ne sais pas comment se fait la traduction, s'il faut que je vous laisse un moment pour traduire, ou si je dois se faire de façon simultanée. I'm asking you, who is present? Parce que everybody here will speak. After I'm finished, you are sure?
I'm sure, very sure.
Oh, it's not good. Bon, d'accord. Bon, donc je tenais vraiment à remercier vraiment l'initiative de l'MBC africain. Au nom du président Sassou Nguesso, vraiment merci beaucoup. Et nous sommes aujourd'hui, l'Afrique de façon globale n'émet que 4% d'émissions de gaz à effet de serre, mais l'Afrique est secouée, impactée plus que les autres continents sur les questions de changement climatique. Et l'Afrique a besoin des financements pour se désengager pour certains pays des énergies fossiles comme mon pays, mais il nous faut des ressources pour cela, pour aller dans une transition énergétique, une transition écologique. Il nous faut également des financements dans le cadre de la levée des fonds pour l'applicabilité des 17 objectifs de développement durable. Et c'est pour ça que le président Sassou ne ménage pas d'efforts à venir aux différentes conférences des partis, à lui-même abriter des sommets avec ses pairs, ses homologues africains, pour justement tirer la sonnette d'alarme, surtout que Nous avons l'un des objectifs de développement durable étant l'éradication de la pauvreté. Il nous faut donc ces financements. Je ne vais pas être plus longue et tout simplement vous remercier au nom du président de l'Institut des Sceaux de ce prix que vous lui décernez. Et vous pouvez me croire, il en est vraiment très heureux. Et je vous remercie très sincèrement. Merci encore une fois de plus. Beaucoup de courage.
So thank you very much, Honorable Minister Arlette Sudan. Just to recap on what has been said. So first, it's of course it's a great honor from His Excellency the President of the Republic of Congo, as they've done the work. They've been at the forefront of climate actions, especially in preserving forestry, the Congo Basin, and today receiving this award. It's not only for the sake of the gathering, but it also just also represent all the effort that have been put in place as a leading African country in climate action. Africa only represents 4% of the global emission, but Africa is also part of the world and has to contribute to the development of the climate action. And that's why the Republic of Congo has been taking the lead in various forums, in even organizing their own forum. Recently, we had the Congo Basin Summit, which welcomes several countries such as Gabon, Central African Republic, Congo DRC, and many other Congo Basin countries. Opportunities are there, not only for investments, but of course carbon markets, an opportunity that we all need to size as Africa, knowing that we are not the number one contributors to the global emission. Getting a fair price is also what we all aim at, and this is also part of the Africa Climate Summit's Nairobi declarations. But all in all, just to say that on behalf of the President of the Republic of Congo, Her Excellency Arlette Sudan has welcomed the prize, and will keep on making sure that Congo will stay in collaboration with other countries in Africa and the world, really at the forefront of climate action. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and we thank the President of the Republic of Congo.
Merci.
So we are now going into another awards. Yeah. And we are very honored because we don't have a representative. It's actually His Excellency, the President of Namibia, for the Green Infrastructure Investment Statement of the Year. Please welcome His Excellency, President of Namibia.
Thank you very much. It is that I'm the only sitting president. The other people will come to thank you. When I say AI, I was saying it is artificial intelligence. So I realized that we are African group, we are recognized as we are used to being honored in Europe, in America. It's a very good feeling that we are all people are recognizing. Thank you. Thank you. And India is a very well known by all of you because of our family. After independence, it looks like always part of South Africa. So many of you were talking here, but they were referring to South Africa. I don't talk about also us who are also the dynamic. So also to say that we politicians seem not to know what is going on. One brother was saying, "Just want politicians to be involved." What's wrong with us? The point is we all went to the same universities. All universities in America, wherever. But the difference is the training you have in economics and so on is to make profit. The bottom line is profit. We also are working to make profit. Our bottom line is peace, unity, uniting our people and maintaining peace. That's our big profit too. But it's not that we don't know. The realities are different. We have a different information, different problems. Whereas you, as economists, have straightforward problems. And ours are too complicated. So I'd like to thank you for Africans to recognize us, what we are doing. It's not easy, but I don't believe in the fact that we African politicians are not changing. I have elected, chosen some guys who are sitting here as my advisors are from private sector. They are the ones who are advising me, I guide them, but that's where I'm moving basically. The green hydrogen thing, the community, the experts, they are the experts. I just talk, but they are the ones who know. So as long as we can choose the right people to advise you, you will succeed. So that's what I'm doing. I'm old, but I get young fellows that are sitting here. Some are from this private sector, but they have to get out my orders, of course. I have to tell them I want this and this, but they can advise me. But they are talking about maybe not knowing that if I don't do certain things, there will be a riot. People who voted for me. So that's the way we do things, maybe in the wrong way, compared to economists. But reality is on the ground. That a person who is not educated, maybe is the person who elected you, who made you to be elected. You don't just drop that person. You let the person reward them too. But we are all pulling in the same direction. Today's African leaders, we had a first wave of African leaders were our extraordinary personalities. One of whom was those founding fathers. We don't have to wake up and fight for Africa. We honor them all. Second wave of African leaders were caught up in the Cold War situation, one party state, and so on. Third wave, we are saying, we pretend or we say, we all come through constitutional means. Even if you came the wrong way, you want to justify that you came through constitutional means. And therefore, to me, term limits. Term limits are very important. That's why I'm serving my term. I'm finishing my term in next year, 1 year from now. And I would like to really go and rest and just see how you young people will take over from us with govern Africa. So, good governance, whatever governance, must be defined by us as Africans. But what we are doing here as Africans recognize us. We use, as I said, to recognize by some other universities and so on. But I'm very happy that my own brothers and sisters are saying we are doing the right thing. At Green Hydrogen, we are really advanced. But now the same to now, but we are leading in Southern Africa, I think. South Africa, when they say that they will be leading force. We are the ones. But we need them because they have to often needed. We are a small country, so South Africa has, all of you are invited. Come, doors are open now. Don't come lay down and say we are left all right now. I'm going to invite you, we are open, we are busy of green hydrogen. We need people to come, experts to come and invest, and Africans must do that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President of Namibia. Indeed, as we won the Green Infrastructure Investment of the Year, it's clear that if we want to achieve our NDC, we will need serious investments in sustainable infrastructure. And this year, within infrastructure, we actually separated different types of infrastructure. And we have now the presidential transports investment assessment of the year, and that goes for Rwanda. We would like to acknowledge His Excellency President Paul Kagame for winning the transport investments statement of the year. We know that so many efforts have been done from sustainable transports. We know the policies that have been put in place for e-mobility, investments at large. There's even the upcoming new Bugesera International Airports that has been recognized as the green investments, has been certified a green investment airports. So all of that have contributed to earning the transports investments of the year. So I would like to welcome on stage the representative of His Excellency President Paul Kagame. If we have his ambassador John Mirenge on behalf of His Excellency, welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President of Namibia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm very honored to be receiving this award on behalf of my president, President Kagame, who you all know his credentials when it comes to green. And as a country, we have intentionally taken the path to keep a sustainable country with sustainable infrastructure across the board. You already had what has been mentioned in terms of our sustainability relations, and this is something that as a country we are committed to, because that is the world the country want to leave for generations to come. And for that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, on behalf of His Excellency President Kagame. Thank you very much to all the participants and to all the winners of the presidential awards. We will now move to the other set of categories, the actual NDCs representing projects. We're acknowledging the leaderships of countries. Now we are moving at the project level. For this part, because there are quite a number, we'll just name each project, and if each category is for the project promoters, and we hope that everyone is in the room, and the ones who are in the room are welcome to come on stage. We'll start with the best investable NDC adoption initiatives of the year. So the best blended investments NDC of the year, and this goes for Gaia. If we have a representative of MUFG, FinDev Canada, or GCF, please welcome on stage. Please give a round of applause. Gaia, best blended investment of the year. As you know, we try to use new instruments, and blended investments are what we believe will allow us to mobilize capital at speed and at scale while de-risking projects. So we have Gaia, which is a blended investment initiative with MUFG, FinDev Canada, GCF. Thank you very much. Another round of applause. Congratulations.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lori here, the CEO of FinDev Canada, and we're grateful and humbled to accept this award together with colleagues from MUFG. What is Gaia? Gaia is a $1.5 billion blended finance platform that's designed to mobilize private capital at scale to support low carbon, climate resilient investment across 25 emerging markets and developing economies, including 10 on the African continent. What's more is the platform is geared 70% towards adaptation investments. It will also support mitigation investments. We're very pleased to receive GCF approval for $150 million at the October board meeting. That provides a concessional tranche that's coming in for first launch. We also have commercial investors. We have philanthropies that are coming in. Very, very pleased. It's been a wonderful team effort together with MUFG, and we look very forward to supporting countries in Africa to help support the NDCs as well as national adaptation plans. Thank you.
And now we are, again, another category that is quite important. I'm wondering why this country keeps winning. But here, as you, I mean, there's some written projects. So I would like to call upon for the best financeable NDC City Initiative of the Year, Green City Kigali of Rwanda, the representative of Green City Kigali, I think the CEO and the mayor, CEO of the Rwanda Green Fund and Lord Mayor of the City Kigali. Rwanda always at the forefront of sustainability and development. Another round of applause. So Green City Kigali is a project that on 120 hectares meant to support livelihoods of Kigalians while using sustainability. They will explain it better, but I think it's a $1 billion project.
Your Excellency, President of Namibia, distinguished guests, and I just want to say thank you for this. I think I cannot also emphasize, it was really good to be acknowledged, just like His Excellency said, when Africans actually recognize African work, I believe that this is very important. Just to say, as my name is Eddie Mugabe, and I'm the CEO of the Rwanda Green Fund. It's a fund that's been established by the government of Rwanda to act as the financing vehicle that can attract the kind of finance needed to support various projects. And one of our flagship projects is the Green City Kigali. And the reason behind all of this is that we talk about green, we talk about green infrastructure, we talk about sustainable transport, but it's also important that we do start piloting and actually so that people can understand what we mean, but also in our context. So this is a flagship project that is being developed in Kenya. It's one of the areas in the city of Kigali where we are developing a master plan on 600 hectares, and within this master plan, we develop a pilot project that will be housing, looking at to develop about 1,500 housing units. But most importantly, we want to develop a sustainable real estate that also addresses affordability. So I think the key message, whatever we try to do, we want to address climate challenges and environmental conservation while putting our development at the center. So if we're not doing this for the people, it doesn't make sense. So again, thank you very much, and it's really an honor to receive this award. Thank you.
Interestingly enough, we are, out of the various categories, we're celebrating infrastructure. We looked at infrastructure at large. Within infrastructure, we looked at transports, sustainable cities. Now we are calling upon the best transport NDC initiatives. Bazigo, an East African project that is essentially operating from Kenya and I think soon in Rwanda. Bazigo, we are welcoming you on stage, represented by Jits Tatachari, CEO, founder of Bazigo.
Distinguished guests, thank you very much. As Bazigo, we are honored to receive this award on behalf of all African citizens living and working in African cities. At Bazigo, our mission is to create the future of clean electric public transport across Africa. We launched this initiative in Nairobi beginning in 2021. We currently have 21 electric buses operating mostly in Nairobi, but now our first 2 electric buses have just begun running in Kigali, Rwanda as well. We've proven that this technology can work. And when we look at the fact that East Africa is home to some of the cleanest electricity in the world, this is not just about sustainable transport for African cities. Our Earthshot is to make Africa a global leader in inclusive, sustainable transport throughout the end of this century. We aim to unlock $1 billion of capital to transform public transport across Africa. And this week we were very proud to announce $5 million in initial investment from the British International Investment. So it's just the very beginning of what we know is a long journey. And we're thrilled to accept this award. Thank you.
So now we are moving towards the Best Waste NDC Initiative of the Year. We have representative from the Strategic Coordinator Climate Champions teams. Naira Etten.
Hello everyone, I'm not Naira, but I'm Isabella Yu. I'm working for the Boston Consulting Group, and you might wonder why I am the one receiving this award. And I'm super happy to represent Noble and the Phoenix Edison team today, with whom we've collaborated over the last year or so, basically to help them out in finding investors that are suitable for their project. And I think this recognition is super, super important for them, and a sign of the fact that they are a fantastic project. And I hope you allow me to kindly read out a short note that Noble has asked me to convey to you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Phoenix Edison, it is an immense honor to accept the NDC Best Waste Initiative of the Year award. This recognition symbolizes our collective dedication to a greener, sustainable future. I extend heartfelt thanks to the organizing committee and stakeholders for making this possible. We deeply appreciate the collaborative efforts of our team and partners, recognizing their pivotal role. We equally salute all the other worthy finalists in this category. Africa has experienced a productivity revolution and has seen the emergence of the urban consumer. Nigeria alone has 24 cities with a population of over 1 million. Nigeria currently generates around 44 million tons of waste annually and produces around 5,000 megawatts of grid-connected power for its 200 million population. For comparison, both South Africa, with a third, as well as Egypt, with half of Nigeria's population, respectively deliver 50,000 megawatts of electricity. Our vision embraces unlocking the untapped power of waste to energy as vital components of both the energy mix and the circular economy in Nigeria and across Africa. The project will have a profound impact on local communities through reducing energy poverty, job creation, and improved living conditions, underscoring our commitment for positive change. We offer our gratitude to supporters, investors, and organizations who believe in our vision and contribute to this success. Let this be a recognition, a catalyst to inspire others in this novel industry in Africa, fostering continued collaboration and innovation for a sustainable Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felix Edison. Now, I would like to call upon Malawi for a great project called iRise Malawi Award, presented by Her Excellency Dr. Jos Banda, and part of the awarded initiatives. Please a round of applause.
Jenny, please. One step to right there. No.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
Team effort.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Honored and privileged to be here on behalf of iRise and our partners on the ground, Her Excellency Dr. Joyce Banda, and for the Kumara Community Development Initiative, and Honorable Minister Usi, the Minister of Natural Resources and Climate Change of Malawi. We are a partnership that is proving on the ground that you can collaborate between governments, NGOs, private sector, and communities to deliver on the promise of climate, community, and capital, where we actually can lift communities out of poverty, we can restore nature and mitigate climate change, and create strong risk-adjusted returns for investors. We are doing this on the ground now today at scale in Malawi. We encourage all of you to continue to follow your dreams, to try to make this a success, and we are living the reality of that dream. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Jos Banda. Thank you very much for the time and the representations of countries. So I would like to now call upon the Best Bankable Donor NDC Initiative of the Year. This is a great project as we are celebrating Donor NDC. We are in UAE, and this project is Etihad 7, represented by Her Excellency Sheikha Issa bin Sultan Al Nayem from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So please welcome.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to accept this award during COP28 on behalf of the Etihad 7 initiative team. Etihad 7 is a UAE-led innovation program dedicated to securing funding for renewable energy projects in Africa. It was launched at the start of 2022 with the aim of supplying clean electricity to 100 million people by 2035. We would like to thank Africa Investor and the NDC Investment Awards for recognizing the UAE's efforts and international efforts as a whole when it comes to aiding communities that are most vulnerable to climate change. Thank you.
congratulations again to the host country, UAE. So now I would like to call upon the best energy initiative of the year, and we have a representative of NASA in the room. Wonderful. Siwa solar PV plants supported by Mazda.
160. لو سمحتوا شوي قريب كده. Simply this number on my mobile.
Yeah, just do what you want.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'll be quick. I know it's almost the end of the day. Just want to say we've been committed to Africa for a very long time, and we are still committed to Africa. In fact, we started our first solar projects in Mauritania back in 2013, 15 megawatt solar park, which under the name Shefzai for solar park. And since then, we've doubled our capacity in Mauritania. And since then, until now, we've installed more than 1.3 gigawatts of renewable energy projects in Africa. So we are considered one of the largest renewable energy players in Africa. We have committed to expand our presence in Africa and reach a capacity of around 10 gigawatts by 2030, which is very ambitious targets, but we're committed to do that, and we're committed to do that together with our partners, such as Infinity Power, AFC, who were present in the panel, and others, of course. And obviously, we cannot achieve these ambitious targets without the support of the government of the United Arab Emirates, of the support of the different governments and states in the African continent. So it's a privilege to be here to receive the support, and I wish everyone luck to decarbonize Africa and provide sustainable and green electricity to everyone in Africa. Thank you all.
Congratulations again. I would now like to call for this award, the best water NDC initiative, and the winner is Climate Funds Manager from Nigeria. Okay, another round of applause for congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations too. Where do I start? Great. Okay, please, man.
Hello everyone. My name is George Verkering, and actually we are from Climate Fund Managers from the Netherlands. We do focus on the African continent, including Nigeria, and our fund is called Climate Investor 2, with a focus on water infrastructure, but it also includes waste and oceans infrastructure. Apart from investments in Senegal and South Africa, I'd like to mention a debt for nature swap that we've provided to the government of Ecuador on the Galapagos Islands. And our fund is $1.1 billion large. We've already raised $900 million. There's only $200 million left, so for those investors in the room, hurry up because it's almost closed. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much to all of you who've been participating to this award ceremony from the Africa Earthshots panels, which epitomizes indeed the policy and actions towards mobilizing resources, capital at speed and at scale. And the ceremonies of awards, the NDC, the African NDC Investment Awards, the second edition here at COP28 in Dubai. We are quite happy that we've been able to recognize the different efforts, both from the presidential side of the countries, the leaders of those countries, but also at the project level by the promoters of the projects, be private or public institutions. Congratulations to all of you. This being said, I want to thank all the partners, the African investors, the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank, the different governments that supported the selections of the projects, what we call the NGA, the National Designated Agencies, the Ministries of Environment, the Ministries of Finance, the private sector at large on the continent, the jury, of course, and thank you all of you, and we wish you a great conclusion for COP28, and we shall meet again next year at COP29. Thank you very much.